God tells Adam that that Cain has to marry Abel's sister, and Abel's has to marry Cain's sister, so that they can continue to have children. They can populate. They can grow from, into a family, and then from a family into a community, and do et cetera, et cetera. So this is how starts off. And so Abel, it says, okay, that's God. If that's God told you that I got to do, okay, I'm with it. But Cain was like, I don't want to marry. I don't want to marry Abel's. I don't want to marry Abel's sister. She's ugly. She's not as beautiful as my sister. I would prefer to marry my sister as opposed to marrying, Abel's sister. That's, because my sister is beautiful. So, like I'll marry my sister. So on this basis of Cain not wanting to do what would be best for the family, or wanting to obey what God said, he kind of rebelled against what was being said, and he said, look, I don't want to do it. So here it is. Adam is put in a dilemma by his two sons, because one is willing to do it, and the other's like, I don't want to do that, man. So this self-satisfying spirit that Cain had is like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to marry my sister. And so Adam didn't know what to do. So what he did, he went to the creator and said, listen, I got a situation here. I need your guidance on this. So God tells him, he said, well, tell each of them to make a sacrifice. Okay. Because Abel was one who he was he was a shepherd, okay, or he tended to the animals, and Cain was a harvester or a gardener, and he collected the fruits of the earth and stored them up. And so when it came time to do the sacrifice, you know, Abel gave his best. He found his best, and he gave that as a sacrifice to the creator of the heavens and the earth. But Cain had stored up wheat. He had stuff that was already stored up, and so he didn't give his best. He gave his worst, or he gave his that was old. And so, and it makes sense. He said, well, why should I give, my, this, when, I got this stored up. If I got to sacrifice something, there's a logic to it. It's just, I'll give this. But the point is that God knew what was in the heart of Cain, and God knew was in the heart of Abel. He knew it was in, and God knew that Cain was not giving his best. And so the sacrifice of Abel was accepted, but the sacrifice of Cain wasn't accepted. And so, and so Cain was pissed off about that. He was pissed off, Cain was pissed off. He's like, yo, man, why wasn't my sacrifice accepted? His was accepted. Why wasn't mine? But see, he didn't even realize his own, selfishness. He didn't realize it. So he couldn't understand it. And so what he started to do, he started to blame those outside of himself. He blamed God for not accepting his sacrifice, and he wound up blaming his father. Yeah, yeah. The reason why my sacrifice wasn't accepted is because you prayed more for Abel and you didn't pray for me. So it was, the reason was not, see, he couldn't see himself. So it was like it was outside of himself that, like he put the blame. So what, and this is in the Torah, Christianity, and in the Quran, where now what happens is, because of this, Cain winds up killing his brother. And he killed his brother because, you know, his sacrifice wasn't accepted. Now we're talking about his brother. somebody he grew up with. Okay, they played together as children. But you know, what winds up developing in Cain as time went on is this self-satisfying spirit grew started to grow in him. And when he became an adult and he was told to do something, he wanted to do things the way that he wanted to do it. And when he did that, it drove him in a moment of rage, and he struck his brother with a stone or a piece of metal or whatever, and killed his brother instantly. And then once he killed his brother, he was like, oh wow. He's like, what? What happened? And so now, he's got another dilemma because, like his rage, his selfishness, it drove him to commit the first crime. And that is the story of Cain and Abel. That's in the Torah, that's in the Quran, and that's in Christian theology. Is that he drove him and he wound up killing him. And when he wound up killing him, he's like, oh wow, now what do I do? He didn't even know what to do. So, it winded up that, like he wound up finally realized that he had to bury his brother. And so he buried his brother. And then after that, we go on after that. Um, and so this is where we at today, um, coming to understand, uh, you know, the meaning of the angel's prostration, etc. And so today, what happens is it's important to understand that. So here it is, Adam, like, yo, he had to live, and he was getting old, he was going to die. And so what he had to do is in the process. So what Adam does, and this is how prophecy, being a prophet, came about, because there were things that Adam and his wife went through in heaven, and he remembered. And so he would tell his children and his grandchildren about the things that happened with him and his wife when they was in heaven, and how by disobeying God, when they disobeyed God, what they had to do, they were sent down to have here on earth in the process, and that they had to struggle, they had to fight against all these different animals. And and he's basically telling his children and his grandchildren, so this is what you're going to have to do. But he was basically was telling them that, look, you know, God will give you guidance, and if you listen to the guidance of the creator, the one who allowed you to exist, if you listen to that, then, like, you will be guided right. But if you don't listen, then there's a consequence that you're going to have to pay, just like your uncles, Cain and Abel, your father, Cain and Abel, there was a consequence that Cain had to face. Cain wound up killing his brother, and when he killed his brother, then it brought him problems. And these problems that it brought him, like, he had to deal with the 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 punishment that came along with that. And so this was the first idea of prophecy. And the first idea of prophecy, why Adam is called a prophet, is because he was the one who sent the message to his children and his grandchildren. That's how the idea of prophecy came about. So so now we can continue. And so it says here, Adam preaches to his children. Adam was utterly grief-stricken by the loss of his two sons. One was dead, the other was won over by the devil. Adam prayed for his son and turned to mundane and returned to mundane matters, for he had to toil for his sustenance. At the same time, he was a prophet, advising his children and grandchildren, telling them about Allah and calling them to believe in him. He told them about Iblis and warned them by recounting his own experience with the devil and how the devil had tempted Cain to kill his brother. Okay? So years and years passed. So Adam's successor is Seth, Seth, Seth. Years and years passed. Adam grew old and his children spread all over the earth. Muhammad Ishaq related that when Adam's death drew near, he appointed his son Seth to be his successor and taught him the hours of the day and night, along with their appropriate times of worship. He also foretold to him the flood that would come. Now, I'm reading from the book, The Stories of the Lives of the Prophets. Um, Abdul Daha narrated that Prophet Muhammad said, Allah sent down 104 Psalms, of which 50 were sent down to Seth. So Adam's death, uh, I'm going to come back. When Adam's death was there, he said to his children, "Oh, my children, indeed, I feel an appetite for the fruits of paradise." So they went around searching for what Adam had requested. They met with the angels who had with them his shroud, and when he was to be embalmed in, they said to him, "Oh, children of Adam, what are you searching for?" Etc. I don't think this is not the point that I want to get to. Okay, after Adam's death, his son Seth took over the responsibilities of prophethood. According to a hadith, Abdul Daha said, Allah sent down 140 Psalms, of which 50 were sent to Seth. When the time of his death came, Seth's son Anush succeeded him. He in turn was succeeded by his son, who was succeeded by the Persians claimed that uh, then he was cut down a tree to build, okay, et cetera, et cetera. These are more stories. But I think the point that I want to make is I'm going to go back to the point that was made here, um, that years and years passed, Adam grew old, and his children spread all over the earth. Okay, so I think that it's Muslim common sense to say that if Adam and his mate were the first, then that would mean that whatever came after that, they were family, right? But it says here that uh, he pointed his son Seth as his successor and taught him the hours of the day, etc. Children spread all over the earth. So that means that the children that are spreading all over the earth are family. So I want to get to this idea about Seth, okay? Because according to Now Valley Civilization, Now Valley Contributions to Civilization, Anthony Browder says on page 75, after studying the heavens, the astronomers of Kemet developed stellar, lunar, and solar calendars as a means of regulating agricultural, religious, and civic activities. So here in this book, it says, years and years passed, Adam grew old, and his children spread all over the earth. Muhammad Ishaq related that when Adam's death drew near, he appointed his son Seth to be his successor and taught him the hours of the day and night, along with the appropriate times, acts of worship. He also foretold to him the flood. But when he told him, so we can see that if Adam told him these things, he also told him after studying the heavens, the astronomers of Kemet developed stellar, lunar, and solar calendars as a means of regulating agriculture, religious, and civic activities. They also predicted eclipses, plotted the movements of numerous stars, described the methods for determining the phases of the moon, and identified five planets. They called Mercury by a different name, Venus by a different name, Mars by different names that I can't pronounce, Saturn by a different name, and Jupiter by a different name that I can't pronounce. But these names that are given, they called Mercury Sebku. Okay, so you see that Sebku was changed to Mercury so that we understand it today. That's the planet Mercury was once called Sebku, a name that, like we understand the name Mercury. We don't understand the name Sepku. Okay. Venus was called Benu Asa. So the Benu Asa was changed to the name Venus. So Mars was turned to Heru Kuti, was changed to Mars. So there were name changes that basically went on. So in Kemet, these names were given, and so that you understand, I'm telling you about the names that we understand today, which is Mercury, Venus, Mars, etc., etc. The effectiveness of any calendar is determined by its accurate timing of the cyclical appearance of a specific heavenly body. The moon was easy to identify because of the apparent changes in its shape. The lunar month was determined by the interval between successive full moons, which is a period of precisely 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 2 seconds. The word month is derived from the word month, which, okay, this lunar calendar was useful for had shortcomings because of its difference, etc. The daily apparent motion of the sun provided an accurate unit of measure. Now we're talking. Now I just want let's put ourselves in the place of Adam and his and the children of Adam. That the Earth is still the Earth at that time. That was it still took the Earth 365 days to get around the sun. It's still sun. The sun rose and set. So the same environment, that same idea that has been since the beginning of creation continues today. That same variation, that same variation continues today. The daily apparent motion of the sun provided an accurate unit of measurement. Eventually, the solar day and the changing seasons of the year, the solar changes of the changing seasons of the year, it still exists today. Gave rise to the development of a calendar based on the solar year. The solar year is defined as the time it takes the planet Earth to make one complete revolution around the sun, which is a period of 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 46 seconds. The astronomers of Kemet were the first to develop a solar calendar which divided the year into 365 days, consistent with months of 30 days each. 5 additional days were added to the calendar year, which corresponded to the birth of the gods, Nectaru. Now, nectar in African language means a god, a god. That's what it means, a god. Okay. Or Osiris, Isis, Horus, Set, and who were progenitors of the human race. There you go. That is progenitors of the human race. That's what we're talking about. Progenitors of the human race. They're saying Osiris, okay, which is Greek, Isis, which is Greek, Horus, which is Greek, Set, which is Greek, and this other name, who were progenitors of the human race. So using our Muslim common sense with the stories of the lives of the prophets, of saying that Seth was years past, Adam gave his children this, that Seth was one of his children, and Seth is mentioned right here in Now Valley Contributions to Civilization by Anthony Browder. Okay. So there's a commonality that's actually going on here. But I think the most important thing for us to understand is that there is a familiarity here, that Seth was not a prophet. He was just Adam's successor. That's who he was. And so we can move, we can read more. And it says here, this is interesting. Now, this is getting away from the stories of the lives of the prophets, but there's something there's something that I want us to kind of understand. The ass is a stubborn, passionate, and often overburdened animal. It symbolizes the stubborn personality of humans. This personality, like the ass, bears the weight of our suffering and carries us through life, but often refuses to go in the direction we think is best. So, the idea of an ass is that, like, is it to say that I am going to stubbornly follow what God tells me to follow? And even though you want me to follow something else, I'm not following it. I'm going to stubbornly follow what God says to follow because my mother and father, which was Adam, and that's the lesson that they taught us, that the whisperer continued to whisper. And when they whispered, it wound up taking them off track. So I'm going to stubbornly follow what God said to do. Stubbornly. And so, and listen what it says here, the way that it says it. It says it symbolizes the stubborn personality of humans. This personality, like the ass, bears the weight of our suffering and carries us through life, but often refuses to go in the direction we think is best. And that's the problem that all the prophets had. That they would tell the people that this is the way to go, and they said, we ain't going in that direction. We going, this is the direction we going in. But the stubbornness of the prophets have always been that, like, look, I'm going to do what God says. Okay, moving forward. The ass symbolizes the nectar or the god Set, because like that animal, he is also a reddish color. Set represents the rebellious nature of the spirit and that which is often referred to as evil. So that's where the question becomes. The question becomes, you know, that's the dilemma that's there. So the idea is, did Set, if Set is now represented as evil because he doesn't want to do what the good tells him to do? That's the thing. Okay. All right. So we're going to move forward because there's something else that I want you to see. Okay. One of the most celebrated gods in all of Kemet was Asur. Okay. Asur, um, which is supposed to be Abel, who is commonly known by his Greek name, Osiris. It has been written that at the time of his birth, a voice was heard to proclaim that the Lord of creation was born. The story of Asur is long and quite involved. He is recognized as a great mythical king of Kemet who brought civilization to his people and established a code of laws and instruction for the worship of God. He ruled Kemet along with his wife Aset, who is better known by her Greek name Isis. Now, if if Set is known as Satan, okay, because he's the stubborn one. If he's known as Satan, the stubborn one, then his wife, his twin sister, her name would be what? Asset. So you got Set and you got Asset, who is the sister. All right. So there's a renaming from Cain to Set and Asset, who is brothers and sisters. I'm just giving you some ideas as far as this is concerned. Okay, and what she did is she was married to Asur, who would be Abel. According to legend, according to legend, okay, here's another story. Aset was slain by his cunning brother Set. So Abel was slain by his brother Set, who cut his body into 14 pieces and scattered it throughout Kemet. This is the story. After a long search, Aset, who was supposed to be the wife of Abel or Asur, see, the names change. Names change. Aset found all of the parts of her husband's body except the phallus. That's the Phallus, the phallus. And the phallus, and I looked up, so I was, well, what is a phallus? And the phallus is another name for the penis. And the penis, according to the legend and the stories, was thrown into the Nile River. So that was something that they couldn't get back because they say the fish ate it, etc. So what happened was Aset, okay, which is the wife of Asur or Abel, all right, because we talking about the changing of names. Remember, Aset is the sister of Set, all right, or Cain, all right, Cain and his sister. So Cain is his name now is Set, and his sister's name is Aset. So Set kills his brother Asur, which is Abel, and then cuts him up in all these pieces and spreads throughout the land. And then when he spreads throughout the land, he takes the phallus, which is another name for the penis, and throws it in the Nile River. And then what she does, Aset was our child before the murder of Asur. But by means of certain powerful words given to her by another god whose name was Ta, who represents divine articulation of speech, Aset, the wife of Abel, resurrected her husband, her slain husband. Shortly thereafter, Aset conceived the child upon being immaculately impregnated by the spirit of her husband and gave birth to a son, Heru or Horus, who avenged the death of his father by slaying his uncle Set. So I'm giving you the story. Okay, this is a story from an Egyptian point of view, and this is a story from the stories of the lives of the prophet, where Adam was utterly grief-stricken by the loss of his two sons. One was dead, and the other was won over by the devil. Adam prayed for his son in turn and returned to mundane matters for his life to toil in. At the time, he was a prophet, so he was a prophet. He was advising his children and grandchildren, telling them about Allah and calling them to believe in him. He told them about Iblis and warned them by recounting his own experience with the devil and how the devil had tempted Cain, okay, Set, to kill his brother, okay? Okay, so and then again, years passed. Adam grew old, and his children spread all over earth. At Adam's death, he appointed his son Seth to be his successor. Okay, okay, and taught him the hours of the day and night, along with the appropriate acts of worship. So here is where, and as you see, what we read. Um, This is where we read, okay, that was on 83, right? That was 83. Okay. The astronomers of Kemet were the first to develop a solar calendar. So, set, okay. The astronomers of Kemet were the first to develop a solar calendar which divided the Earth into 365 days, consisting of 300, which corresponds to the birth of the gods, the Nectaru. So these were Osiris, Isis, Horus, Set. Okay, so the names have been changed. Okay, so according to Egyptian language, these were the first gods: Osiris, which is a Greek name; Isis, which is a Greek name; Horus, which is a Greek name, Set were the progenitors of the human race. That's what they're giving us here. So if we said Osiris, Osiris's name was Aset. I'm sorry, Osiris's name was Set. Isis's name was Aset. Horus's name was, which is the child of Osiris and or Abel and his and Aset or Cain's sister. Horus is the child that she immaculately conceived. And then there was Set, okay, who were progenitors of the human race. Okay, that's what they say. So I think that the Nectar set 84. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we read that, and then we go to 89, 89, which talks about, yeah, here in 89, that's when we said after Herod or Horus, he ruled as king of the earth. Okay. Asset without child before the murder of Assur. Okay. Asset was, again, Asset is the sister of Cain, and she was without child because of the murder of Assur, who was Abel. But by means of certain powerful words by her given to her by Thos, who represents divine articulation of speech, Aset resurrected her slain husband. Shortly thereafter, Aset conceived a child upon being immaculately impregnated by the spirit of her husband and gave birth to a son. We've heard of this before, right? Okay. And then the other thing to understand is that, again, she was the one who, what she did, because what Set did is he cut up his brother's body, and this is the myth, and they put it all throughout the land, and she gathered all of it back together, the body all back together, and except for the phallus, which was known as the penis. And another name for the phallus is the obelisk, which is that tall monument that's in Washington D.C. that's upright. That's supposed to be a stiffened a phallus. That's what it's supposed to represent, a stiffened phallus, because this was the sign of strength. A stiffened phallus was the sign of strength. Okay, so I'm not going to go any further with that. Okay, so so as an adult, Heru, which is the child that came forth from Aset, whose name now is changed to Isis, okay, has a son whose name is Heru or Horus, becomes a symbol for good overcoming evil after he avenges the death of his father by slaying his wicked uncle Seth. So now this is what this story, this myth is saying. It's saying that Aset, what she did, she Aset or Isis, she gathered the parts of the body back together, okay, and she got impregnated by her dead husband, okay, she, Assur, whose name was changed from Abel to Assur. So she gets, because remember, there was two sets of twins. Cain had a twin sister, and Abel had a twin sister, and they were supposed to get together. So when they got together, Cain slew Abel, leaving the wife, his sister, leaving the wife, his sister, and so he killed him, and because he killed him, and according to he spread the body parts according to this, according to Quran, it says that he just buried the body. But it's also saying that according to Egyptian Set, who winds up being the one son that survives, and who Adam taught him, about, what you have to look at for as far as uh, uh, the sun and the moon and how that affects the agriculture, etc. So he taught him that, and so he left that to him. But he didn't become a prophet. He wasn't a prophet. Oh man, where am I at here? He wasn't a prophet. So because he wasn't a prophet, it's like, okay, he's not a prophet, but I still have to teach him. He's still my son. I got to teach him, and so Aset, or Abel's wife, according to Egyptian theology, Aset, later whose name is changed to Isis. What she winds up doing is getting the body back together, and some kind of way she has a son, and she tells her son about everything that was done and how his uncle is evil. So the young son comes up, Horus. He winds up coming up, and he say, "Yo, man, I'm killing him." And he kills him. He kills him. Okay. As an adult, Heru becomes a symbol of good, overcoming evil, as he avenges the death of his father by slaying his wicked uncle Seth. Cosmologically, Seth represents Satan, represents the setting of the sun, which brings on darkness. Set also represents the destructive forces of nature. Heru, Heru, or Heru, which is supposed to be Abel, personifies the forces of life, and his symbol, the rising sun, banishes the light and overpowers the forces of evil. Okay, so this is, I think that, the point that I'm trying to make here is that there's similar stories that you can see in this, and you can see the way that these stories come, where human, this whole idea about evil, talking about Cain and Abel, just basically, and how this story continues to unfold in the human family when it's spread in many parts of the earth. And in the process of it spreading in many parts of the earth, how that is, the story is told. So again, and how names are changed, and so we shouldn't. I don't think I have a lot of time. I got 5 minutes left in the program. I don't even know if there's anybody that's even here with me on stories of the lives of the prophets at this. Oh, okay, yeah, we do have a couple of people that are here with us. So I'm going to open up the lines to anybody that might have. So I got the Deprecia Hadi. She's open. Assalamu alaikum. Your microphone is open, Sister Deprecia. Thank you.
Well, welcome my salam to you, Brother William Kareem, and to the AM 360 Zoom listenership and Facebook, all of you, everyone. Okay, so you were saying Haroon, is that see, because what came to my mind when you said Haroon, in the Quran it was speaking of Haru, Maru, and Haroon. Are they up in there? Because they had something to do with bringing about a dissension, between man and wife. So was that kind
No,
of
not at this point. We're basically saying that as human beings, that Adam and Hawa had two sets of twins, according to this stories of the lives of the prophets that we've been reading.
Mm,
And it makes Muslim common sense because we only know about Cain and Abel as far as Christianity is concerned, but they didn't go into depth about it.
mm,
But we know that Cain winded up killing his brother. But according to the Islamic story that's told, that Adam and Hawa had two sets of twins, Cain and his twin sister, Abel and his twin sister, and Adam was told to that his sons were supposed to marry each other's sister. And
mhm,
so Abel wanted, he said, okay, that's what you want me to do, Dad, I'll do it. And so Abel did it. But Cain didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it because he's like, yo, man, your sister's ugly. My sister's finer than mine. I married my sister, but I don't want to marry your sister. I
mm,
don't want to marry your sister. And so on that idea, what winded up happening is um, this was this dilemma that Adam was in because Adam told his sons what to do, and one wanted to do it, the other didn't want to do it. So he took it to God, and God said, "Well, look, tell them both to give a sacrifice." And when they gave the sacrifice, Abel gave the sacrifice. When he gave the sacrifice, he gave his best,
right,
but Cain didn't give his best. He
right.
gave this, well, I'll just give this piece right here. It's not the best, but like, I'll sacrifice this, he's telling to sacrifice. So, this selfishness, this idea of selfishness comes in. So Abel's sacrifice was accepted and Cain's wasn't. And so Cain couldn't see the selfishness within himself. And so he said, well, why wasn't my sacrifice? It wasn't sacrifice because, God just did me dirty. And then he said, the only reason why the Abel's sacrifice was taken because God, Dad, you prayed for more for Abel than you did for me. So
Mm,
so he's putting the blame on everybody and he can't even see it within himself. And so he winds up killing his brother. And then when he killed his brother, what winds up happening, there's a problem. He wound up making an added problem for himself. And when he made this added problem for himself, he didn't know what to do. So God showed him what he had to do. But what it did also, that it made Abel's wife a widow. And she was pissed off about it because her husband is dead, but Seth, who was the one who was wrong, gets to live on. So
right.
according to this, as the story goes, and it's changed when it gets to Egypt, because Set, I guess he goes to Egypt and understanding the whole idea about astronomy and the way that astronomy works and everything, then they were able to figure out a whole lot of things and they were able to work with the creation and they start to build and they start to understand the animals and all the rest of that. And so, they start to create these stories. And one of the stories that was created was this idea that Seth, who is Seth, Seth, who is the child of Adam. Seth, you understand what I'm saying? He's the child of Adam. You know,
Right.
he winds up, he's the evil one.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife, his sister, Seth's sister, her name is Aset,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but she's a widow.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did is they changed the names
Mm-hmm.
and they wound up changing the names. And so Asur becomes the name of Abel.
Mm-hmm.
Set keeps the name Set. Aset winds up, she says, well, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to avenge you killing my husband.
Right.
And when she said, I'm avenge you killing my husband, she can't have a child now. She can't have a child because her
Right.
husband's dead. But
Right.
then what winds up happening with her is that this whole thing about the immaculate conception comes about.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a child that's named Horror or Heru, which is Heru, which is also known as Horus. And
Okay.
Horus in Egyptian history winds up avenging the death of his father, and he kills his uncle Seth,
Mm-hmm.
which is Cain.
Right.
Crazy. But
Yeah.
but what's interesting about it is that it. Oh, and this is the last part. I have to say this part. In the Kemetic literature, the world was created by the Ennead, a group of nine Nectaru or nine gods. The Nectaru atom, ATUM, and I'm reading from the stories, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. The god Adam, ATUM or ATOM, whose name means all and nothing, projecting himself into the cosmic existence, and then produced from his body four complementary pair of of of, of nectars or gods. Four. Okay, so we get the four again, which is Cain and his sister,
Mm-hmm.
Abel and his sister, but they give them different names. Okay, these four nectaru was said they had given birth to four other nectaru. They were Asur, Aset, Set, and the female um, uh, 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 complement of Set. Okay, so this is just what the human being does. The human being tells stories. The human
Mm-hmm.
being changes names because Allah gave him the nature of things. And so what human beings winds up doing, this is the point, basically the point that I'm making, that that's
Mm-hmm.
what the human being does.
Mm-hmm.
He tells stories, changes them, he puts changes the name of things. What did what we had the Gulf of Mexico for how long?
Mm-hmm.
And now what is it called?
God from America, so he said.
We had, we had, we got now Doge. What does Doge mean?
Mm-hmm.
The Department of Government Efficiency. We already had names for all of the offices, but this is what the human being does. He changes things.
Mm-hmm.
This is and tells stories. So right now, all of these stories that are in uh uh all of these stories that are in our culture today. This is what the human being does. That's the point that I want to make.
Mm-hmm.
That this is what the human being does. What do we have to do? What do we have to do? We have to be able to use our Muslim common sense to get the guidance from the Quran, because there's two things that we got going on for us.
Mm-hmm.
The Quran is a reflection of the creation, and the creation is a reflection of the Quran. They work together. So all truth comes from that. We should be able to dissect these stories. We
Mm-hmm.
should be able to dissect if we want to dissect these stories, we should be able to by using the Quran and the creation, by
Mm-hmm.
using both of them. And we should, and many times the human being can, because that's what Allah created us to do. But according to culture and government, etc., what they're doing is telling us, don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe what you see. Don't believe it. Listen to the story I'm telling you and accept the story that I'm telling you. That's what basically. Listen to the story I'm telling you and accept it. Well, it's
Mm-hmm.
not true. Yes, it is true, but it's not true. Yes, it is true. It's not true. Yes, it is true. It's not true. Yes, it is true. Okay, it is true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
That's what happens with the human being over a period of time, winds up accepting it.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are not true. So
Alhamdulillah.
yeah, again, that is true. Alhamdulillah, you know what I mean? Again, I'm just basically, giving you I'm just William Kareem. I'm not, you know, this well-known person. I'm not a renowned person. I'm just your brother, William Kareem, and I'm utilizing, what Allah has blessed me to understand, and I'm hoping in my Muslim common sense to say these things.
Yes, sir. Thank you so kindly for that.
Thank you, sis.
Mhm.
Anybody else before we close out? Okay. So we're going to bring this part of the program to an end, but I just want to say that today on the New Day for Al Islam Community Radio, we have a great program that's going to be going on, and that's going to be the women in Islam who get together and make the presentation from the Quran. I think they're going from 131 to 140, or for 141 to 150 at this point in Surah Al-Baqarah. We've been doing this for our sisters have been doing this for quite some time, and we have Sister Martha Nala. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Martha. Yes, can you say something about what's going on today on Tuesday?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. God's peace be upon everyone. Today, 10 a.m., the sisters women will, voices of Al Islam will be reading from 141 to 150 of Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2. And we're so appreciative. So please join us. And that number is, shall I give it now,
Yes,
William?
please.
Is 971 379 9162.
971
All right, 10 a.m.
9162. 971 379 9162. Please join us. All
Thank
right,
you.
thank
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Well, thank you so very much, brothers and sisters.
Oh, and excuse me, did you say kosher for marriage today at 7?
Yes, on
It's
American Muslim 360.
all right here on American Muslim 360. Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. As we bring the program to an end, I would like to say that we pray that there's something that you may have gotten from this. And again, this is our interpretation, or my interpretation, of these things. I've read from the stories of the lives of the prophets by Ibn Kathir, and I've read from Now Valley Contributions to Civilization by Anthony Browder, in case you wanted to do some follow-up as far as some of these ideas is concerned. And just remember, this is what the human being does. The human being changes things, comes to understand, and then tells the story the way that he wants. He tells the story the way that he wants to tell the story, and whether you want to accept it or not, that's up to you. So and the other point that we want to make is, the most important thing that we can do is to say your prayer, read your book, and call on your God. All right. And so until the next time, we give you the greetings. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam.